Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sox Machine podcast, now part of the Foul Territory Network. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, alongside Sox Machine's beat reporter, James Fegan, and managing editor, Jim Margalus. And hello, gents. And for all those that are watching us on YouTube at youtube.com/Sox Machine or on the podcast page at soxmachine.com, look at all the nice graphics that we have, and we look a lot better on video. I'm so happy about this partnership because it's really going to add a lot to our capabilities, especially in the multimedia front. But Jim, Sox Machine, Foul Territory, how are you feeling about this partnership?
Feeling good. Feels good to be part of a network that is concentrated on baseball, cares about baseball, understands the timeline, the news cycles, the ins and outs of the season, everything like that, and is uh, stuck to baseball, stick to sports, stick to baseball specifically, and that's really encouraging. And then also, if we're going to go more into video, it helps to have people who know what video does, versus going into video in a shabby manner because you feel like you have to. So it's nice that you have people who are enthusiastic about it, will help you along the way, and really looking forward to it.
Yes, and some of the changes for us at Sox Machine. So we've been doing two podcast episodes for years. Now we're going to be moving to three podcast episodes. They're going to be a little bit shorter in length. So instead of like close to an hour long, these are going to be between 25 to 35 minutes. We'll be able to do more interviews as well as far as episodes during the week. So for all those that have wanted us to do more on the podcast front, you are in luck. We will be doing more in the very near future. But I also want to give a huge thank you to all those at Foul Territory that made this transition happen. Scott Braun, Mark Weiner, thank you guys for giving us this opportunity to be, as far as your resource on the Chicago White Sox. And Jerry Meyer, you are a saint, sir. Thank you so much for your patience and holding our hand during this transition, as we've been working pretty hard at Sox Machine the last couple of weeks to move over to the Foul Territory Network. So we're pretty excited. You could also watch James. He was just on Foul Territory today on youtube.com/Foul Territory, as he talked a lot about it and answered some questions regarding the upcoming trade deadline of the Chicago White Sox. So I highly recommend checking out that video. But speaking of James, you're back from Philadelphia. I'm so sorry about the air quality. As we're recording this, it is one of the worst air qualities documented history in the city of Chicago. But how was the All-Star game experience for you in Philadelphia?
Never again will I pack for a trip in the middle of July and have two light colored dress shirts that I wear out of the 3 days I have to be at the ballpark. I feel like the shirt I wore to the All Star game had like different patterns of sweat from like various things I did throughout the day or how I was holding my bag. So yeah, that was my main takeaway from All Star weekend. But as far as like the players, up until the eighth inning on Tuesday, I was preparing to write a story basically about like Miguel Vargas getting robbed of a hit by his minor league buddy Andy Pajes, and then things kind of flipped in a major way with him. Uh, it's funny, like it's a game dominated by pitching. Everyone like it's like elite arms that are on rest, and so like no one even. We saw the Sox get to Cade Smith when he was maybe a bit extended, but like see him at the height of his powers, you could like, how does anyone hit this dude? And I feel like that was kind of like every arm in the game to some degree. Miguel Vargas of all people, like people felt like bad luck with like you know Murakami being kind of rusty as he comes back. He's not at the full height of his powers, and he's trying to compete in the home run derby. Like he didn't look super in sync like that series in Oakland, or not Oakland. Um, and I think the one at bat that Tristan Peters got was against a really tough lefty as well. Vargas got two non-overpowering lefties to like the guy who's basically, if you put this minimum at like 125 plate appearances, the best hitter in the American League against left-handed pitching. So he just smokes two balls from like these guys that like can't get a breaking ball in on him. The first one he kind of gets robbed of, but like the next one is the only extra base hit of the All Star game, and all of a sudden like this is a guy whose talent is speaking the loudest of seemingly the loud of the entire weekend. When Caleb Bonham looked fine, looked pretty fast running up the base, but he went over 2 with a pop out and a ground out. He just looked like another guy who was like belonged on that stage but didn't stand out. Murakami gets eliminated in the first round. Peters is the last second ad, and obviously a lot of his hubbub around him is like, he doesn't even get to enjoy the All-Star weekend because his wife is in the hospital. Not that he didn't enjoy it, but like obviously a little bit more of a complicated weekend.
Yeah.
Vargas all of a sudden at the last moment gets this incredible late moment in the sun and winds up being like kind of the big story of the weekend compared to like how little offensive fireworks there were everywhere else. And it's just kind of incredible. It's kind of like his season in a nutshell, where like out of nowhere when you least expect it, here's Miguel Vargas like starring the show. So, and we've talked about him at length this season, but we didn't know where he's going to go, especially since like watching the tunnel. Like I came down in the 6th inning because Pajes was getting pulled from the game and he was about to do availability. I was like, at this point, I don't have any better angles. I might as well just go down there and talk to Pajes, and got good stuff from him. He was willing to play along. He's like, I made a gesture. Miguel made some gesture like I shouldn't have hit that, and I made a gesture like you should have hit it harder. And like, all right, this will be a fun little anecdote to tell at least. And then that happened. I figure once that happens, I'm not going to go back upstairs to the auxiliary press box, which is like a part of the upper deck. And I'm just kind of like waiting, like watching the rest of the game, and that like happens. And we're not sure because we're watching it on silent in the tunnel. Like, is he going to get named AL MVP? And it's me and like, there's an MLB.com writer who got assigned to like Vargas once he hit the home run, and Tribune's there, and we're watching the TV on mute, and we're trying to figure out if he's just been named like the All-Star Game MVP based on the camera, because like they show Cody Bellinger as like the team is walking on the field, but then they cut to Vargas, and then we see Tom Verducci cutting to Vargas, and we're like, oh my god, he's done it. Because like where he's going to be, if is he going to come to the clubhouse, or is he going to go to this like press conference room, that's going to be swung by that. So we don't know. And then eventually like we see him on the field. He runs in at one point into the clubhouse, and then he runs back out and he says like, I gotta go do TV. And I'm looking at like Connor McKnight with CHSN. I was like, we should just follow him. So we run out onto the field, and he gets like taken, and we were watching him like get interviewed by Fox and like dap up like David Ortiz. And at this moment, I'm like, what is Miguel Vargas's life right now? This is such an insane journey. Less than 2 years ago, I remember like there's like this routine loss they had to the Mets, but like Vargas pulled a fastball for a double. And it's just like, he turned around velocity. Like, I need to talk to him. Like, that was like a big development for him at the time. And I remember like waiting for him at that point, and like how much skinnier he was back then compared to his now. And like, it's like, this is such an insane trajectory for this guy. Like he's doing live TV in his second language for a national audience. And he used to be this guy who like, he used to be a big prospect. I think we're supposed to cover him, even though he's batting 107 now. I think he's a big deal to now. Like, everybody knows he's a big deal. Like, it was like I don't know if like we got like super amazing quotes, because as he said repeatedly, I have no words. He couldn't sum up what it was, but just to kind of be there to see this guy like go through this such a 180 was just kind of like something I'll remember, even if like I don't know if like he might be summing up better what it meant to him a year from now than he was, in the moment after the game where he was just buzzing on adrenaline. So that answer began with my shirts, but now I think I brought it home eventually.
I just want to say, when I was in Philadelphia the weekend before you, James, he was even hotter. Not that we're comparing. Philadelphia's been miserable.
The dark-colored polo I wore to the home run derby, I looked fine in that. Everyone's like, look at that normal man walking around. And Tuesday was like, hey, how's it going? You been here all day? You look tired.
But
you're gonna hydrate, like stuff like that.
I was gonna ask you, Jim, about the cool moment with Miguel Vargas. This season has had so many cool moments, and I'm hoping that there are still more cool moments for the Chicago White Sox. But at least through mid-July, where does Miguel Vargas' home run in the All-Star game stack up?
It's up there. I think just as a symbolic moment for where the White Sox are in terms of the league. Like, I think there have been a lot of moments that are more important to the White Sox season, like Braden Montgomery's debut walk-off stands out, especially since now we've learned what that Rock Chalowski was there, and that was the game that he dropped in on, and he's celebrating in the clubhouse, and that kind of informs his worldview as to what the White Sox are really about versus what their reputation was as he was learning about them. But in terms of where the White Sox are nationally, I think the reputations take long to repair. Like we saw the Athletic poll where they're still down among the teams nobody wants to play for or people hear terrible things about. And that takes probably a couple years of on field performance or surprising investments to repair. But this is the kind of thing that helps. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to put our subscriber dollars towards going to the All-Star game, is just because it felt like, if not a watershed moment, at least one of those milestones to where, okay, it's an all-star who's a deserving all-star, not like Shane Smith last year. He had a good year, but it was an awkward pick for trying to figure out who was an all-star for that team. But like Miguel Vargas is there. Miguel Vargas deserves to have company on this roster. Whether or not the White Sox maintain their performance in the second half remains to be seen, but they've arrived to a certain level on the national stage. You have Murakami in the home run derby. You have Vargas. He could have been a starter, or at least he could have been. I think Caminero is a worthy starter, but in terms of like the way he's playing, like he's up there. And if he keeps doing what he's doing, like I'd be curious to see where he is, like in terms of MVP votes. But I'm happy that he provided such easy copy with the homer. But I think even if he didn't, even if he went like a loud 0 for 2, just being there, there's one quote that he gave to James saying like, you were there, like when in 2024. And I think it's important for them, to see, James or see us at these moments of like lows and then highs, and it's nice that they're having these highs. To where like you travel and see them, and they see you, whether it's the occasional road trip, whether it's the jewel events as they call them. So yeah, I'm happy that Vargas made such wonderful copy, just with his like whirlwind tour of Philadelphia. But even if he didn't, just like it felt important. And that's why we decided, like, even when we thought like Davis Martin was going to be an easy rep and he wasn't, like, that's when we decided to put up the money for this. But like, there was a reason why we did it. And I think Vargas did a nice job of like making it very easy to see why we were there, is because the White Sox are nationally relevant now.
And, this week has been a great week for those that argue that beat reporting is not that important. Like, James, I love the stories that you produced in Philadelphia and the relationship that you have with Miguel Vargas. I think at Sox Machine, toot our own horn, but as far as that angle, the journey that Miguel Vargas and the transition that he's made from somebody sulking after the White Sox lose to the Oakland A's after he got traded by the Dodgers to the White Sox to becoming an all-star is a fascinating story. Cap tip to Jesse Rogers of ESPN.com to be in the draft war room for the Chicago White Sox and shine a light on their entire draft process. So now everybody is more aware of what went into that historic decision for the Chicago White Sox and the internal debate between Rock Chalowski and Grady Emerson. This has been a great week for everyone that reports on the White Sox. So round of applause to everyone that covers his team. As I mentioned on WGN last night, there's so much good news for the Chicago White Sox that it's hard to keep up and cover everything. And we haven't even talked about Tristan Peters all that much in his All-Star game and just making it for him, even though he had to be at the hospital to take care of his wife. But he did get to play. So everybody got to play for the Chicago White Sox, which is a pretty awesome feat for the All-Star game. So if that's the only All-Star game in Tristan Peters' career, he made it and he played. And that's a pretty awesome highlight for him. And hopefully he gets more opportunities. But it's the opposite, Jim, of Tim Anderson making it and not getting at bat. Like, I'm still sour about that.
Yeah, it seems like they've figured it out over the last few years in terms of getting everybody into the game. There are a lot more awkward mid-inning changes, I think. But it's fine. And certainly Fox, like, they seem to love the ads and like the full ad breaks for pitching changes everything like that. If you want flow in a broadcast, you're not going to get it.
No.
But they are doing a good job of making use of the players who are available and working around the players who are unavailable. And after all those years where it counted towards World Series home field advantage, and I kind of like that. Like I thought it was an interesting experiment, but it really is an exhibition, and it does mean a lot for these players to be there and get into games. And so it's nice that players can, without worrying about like the integrity of the game, or with, worrying about like the matchups. And if you have Peters against the lefty, so be it, because at least he's in the game with his bananas bat, showing where he came from, and being proud of it. And that's worth seeing.
And through,
I also it might just be me, but I appreciate seeing Dylan Cease at the All-Star game, just because it's his first one, and I think everyone kind of viewed him as deserving back in 2022, and it was satisfying just because he's clearly very still Dylan Cease, because the interaction we had, I thought he had made eye contact with me when he was at his like press conference, which he did in an Aladdin t-shirt while everyone else was in full uniform. I guess John Schneider was merely in a shirt and pants and not an Aladdin t-shirt. But apparently he did, because I came up to him during batting practice and he said, like, man, I saw you in the press conference, and the way the light was hitting your head, it looked like you had frosted tips in your hair. And I just thought to myself, man, good for that dude taking a chance. But now you're up close, I see that you just still have normal hair. And that interaction couldn't happen with anyone other than Dylan Cease. And it's just like great to see the guy I know is still in there, even hundreds of $1 million later, and now they succeed in Toronto. So for me, at least, it was nice to have that interaction full circle. Then to see him again in the tunnel as he was walking out and being like, "You really think I should get frost tips?" And him being like, "They look great," even though like what he's referring to them looking at is like not real. Like I don't know if it's real qualitative assessment if it didn't happen, but it's great to see Dylan. Loved my time with him. Loved seeing other people get exposed the way he answers questions. It's like, it makes me like giggle in the middle of a press conference. It's like, this is who I know and appreciate, and you guys are experiencing him for the first time. And like they asked him about like the ABS, and he's like, "Well, I like it when it goes my way. I don't like it when it doesn't." And he ended his answer, and you're like, everyone waiting a beat for him to expound more, and like he's clearly done. Like, yeah, that's Dylan. You got to. That's why I love him.
And this is why you should subscribe at soxmachine.com, so we can send James to these events and he can have these amazing interactions. And we do have the technology now, James. Artificial intelligence can give you frosted tips, so we can play this out.
I feel like he was calling me a coward. Like, here he is taking risks, wearing like a shirt that says "Rub my lamp," with the genie from Aladdin on it, and I can't even have the courage to frost my tips. Dylan's put down the gauntlet, and we'll see if I respond.
We need a frosted tips tier.
Yeah, we sure do. Well, through our friends from Foul Territory, you can shop their 2026 All-Star Collection at the new look foulterritoryshop.com. The new shirts feature every All-Star, including the White Sox Munetaka Murakami, Miguel Vargas, and Tristan Peters, and you keep an eye out for more officially licensed gear throughout the rest of the season and the postseason at foulterritoryshop.com.
Howard, my dad was T-boned by a utility vehicle and is in surgery now. What should I do?
I'm sorry to hear about that. It's really great that you're getting him the medical care and treatment that he needs right now. These are 3 important things that I think you need to know. Injuries are unexpected and turn lives upside down. I'm Howard Ankin, and I'm here to help. If you or a loved one have been hurt at work or in a car, truck, or rideshare accident, call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal. That's Ankin Law.
Now, we didn't get a chance to talk about Munetaka Murakami a whole lot about his All-Star Game festivities he played, and then he had the wonderful pleasure of facing Mason Miller, and nobody this season is having a lot of fun against Mason Miller, as Miller struck out Murakami on 4 pitches. But lots of press, no Shohei Ohtani at the All-Star Game festivities, which meant all of this huge contingent of Japanese media and national media curious about Munetaka Murakami. he got a lot of attention. And one of those things that James Fegan tweeted about, reporting from Philadelphia, that all-star first baseman Munetaka Murakami said he's not thinking or talking specifics about contract extensions right now, but affirmed that he would like to stay with the White Sox long-term. And then last night on WGN Sports, Josh Friedman asked me about this tweet and about the possibility of signing Munetaka Murakami to a contract extension. And here were my thoughts on WGN Sports last night.
The fact that they can try to capitalize on this momentum they have and keep Murakami long term.
The secret to sales is to strike when the iron is hot. And when you have someone that publicly says, I would love to stay here, and they come from Japan, and that opens up new streams of revenue that you've never had as the Chicago White Sox, Justin Ishbia should be calling Jerry Reinsdorf right now and telling him, whatever you need, you got it. So then it really becomes a baseball decision for the Chicago White Sox and what their future plans are at first base. But I mean, this White Sox future infield, I know everyone's really excited about Rock Chalowski. I continue to be asked, well, what are they going to do with all these shortstops? Make the entire infield shortstops? That's what every MLB team would have. In the near future, the White Sox could field 4 infielders who have the potential to hit 25 or more home runs. That is incredibly rare in Major League Baseball. So for me, Josh, it's an absolute no-brainer both on and off the field. Yeah. The White Sox should figure out on how to keep Murakami.
All right, so that's my take. No need to hear more from me, but we did get a lot of questions, Jim, on PO Sox regarding contract extensions. And if you want an opportunity to ask questions in PO Sox, again, go to soxmachine.com/products and become a Sox Machine subscriber. And one of those questions came from Trooper Galactus, Jim. And Trooper wrote to us, if the White Sox are able to hammer out an extension with Murakami, it's almost certainly going into 9 figures, but how far? Could he double Andrew Benintendi's current record contract? How will his marketability, young age, and huge strengths be measured against his known limitations, weaknesses, and injury history when trying to come up with a term and an AAV as far as his annual contract value? And this is a really good question, Jim. And it's one thing for me to say, pound the table. Yes, the White Sox should do it. But how would you go about answering Trooper's question of what a possible contract extension would look like with Munetaka Murakami?
We've been using Kyle Schwarber as a comp throughout this process, like even when he was posted as a free agent and everybody is trying to figure out just what the numbers were in NPB, how they translate, the strikeouts, the power, the positional limitations. If there are limitations, can he play a position or is he DH? And it kept coming back to Schwarber, and I think the production is pretty close, especially for a guy's first go around in Major League Baseball. That he's the home run rate, the strikeout rate, everything is pretty comparable. And the fact that he's able to get so much out of the contact he makes is pretty remarkable. So with Schwarber, like he just signed a 5-year, $150 million contract. He's older. So certainly, the 5 years is running up to, I think, his age 38 season. Or something like that. So that's probably something to where maybe Murakami goes longer, but also Schwarber's got a longer track record of performing in the majors. Right now, Murakami's through half a season. It's been altered by injury so far, so we'll see how he comes back from the injured list. So I think this is why it's kind of a delicate time to try to talk about extensions and contract value, et cetera. Like you have to see if this maybe not derails his season, but interrupts it to where like he does need a while to come back and get back to where he was, since he walks such a fine line between his power and his swings and misses to understand like where his equilibrium is. But that's kind of the first place I look is what has Schwarber gotten paid, and then, adjust age for level and then try to kind of do some secret sauce type finagling in terms of, how much Schwarber's proven track record stateside measures up against the uncertainty. But certainly like $30 million a year for X amount of years seems like a good place to start.
And James, you were asked about this question on Foul Territory, but it was in regards to Miguel Vargas. And you mentioned Vargas could be a target for extension, maybe even Kyle Teal. How realistic is it for the White Sox and even Murakami to have serious conversations about a contract extension?
They've had they broached the topic surely, but as far as serious in terms of like get it done levels of conversation, I think if Murakami's camp signed this deal to re-enter free agency while he's still in his 20s, I think that he's expressed that desire to want to stay. I think that's all well and good. That's positive. That certainly like builds the idea that he will stay or will, be interested in staying. I don't, unless he has to want it so much that he's going to put his thumb on the scale, because I think the approach, the strategy, the logical move from his side is to re-enter free agency and test your value on the open market and not constrict it to getting what you feel like is a fair deal from the White Sox. You're always going to do more, especially when you're this close to just re-enter the market. So like he can have that desire to want to come back and like give them last or first refusal, however you want to put it, or chance to match or whatever. But in terms of like what he would do to maximize his outcome, which was kind of like why you signed this sort of pillow contract, it would be to re-sign with the White Sox after 2027, not agree to some deal before that point. So unless he's like so much like I want to abort our strategy level of like wanting to stay here, then I think that's the path this follows. And I get extending him. He's extremely good. He's been very productive, and to lift beyond that, like clearly it's a culture changing signing where everyone talks about being energized, that he's universally beloved. It's someone that they feel like his presence has lifted them, both with the presence in the lineup and the presence in the clubhouse, and just feeling like they were serious players and that the front office is taking this season seriously from the outset. Like he's been a galvanizing force in all these ways. From a pure like emotionless quant perspective, it's the lowest contact rate in baseball in 3 years. There's another the exception to that is like Joey Gallo on his way out, and then it's another gap of multiple years before you have someone who's a regular, let alone a productive regular, with a sub 60 contact rate. If they don't get this done, if they wind up having some other solution for first base, they're not crazy. There are baseball reasons for being like, do we want to see this guy in his 30s? Yeah, maybe the way bottom of the scale contact, maximum power looks at 26 under a below market deal is always going to be easier to fall in love with than paying Pete Alonso rates for somebody who gets it done in a way that's like walking a tightrope all the way down. And if things shift a bit farther at like some other delineation of their career where they, maybe when they hit 30, you could easily be in a position of why did we rush to pay premium value for these years because we were so excited about what it looked like when he was 26 and 27. Just saying. That said, I won't be the person if they sign Murakami to extension being like, blah, blah, the contact rate. I'm not that sort of soulless, joyless person anymore. I'm just saying, like, if it doesn't happen, it's not like they're serious. They like winning baseball games if they sign him. If they don't, they've hated all these games they've won. They wish they couldn't do them. They don't want to win again. Just saying.
Well, Jim, we've talked
anymore.
about it.
I like that, that
anymore.
qualifier. Anymore.
Yeah. Jim, we've talked about it for a few years on this show. At some point, the White Sox need their Jason Worth signing, and it's Andrew Benintendi doesn't count, in my opinion. So I get what James is saying from a baseball standpoint. If you don't like the contact rates and you do not think Murakami is going to age well, then you have an internal solution. You can move Vargas from third to first when Rock Chalowski is ready to go and take over shortstop and move Colson Montgomery from short to third. You have that now plan in place. So I understand from a baseball perspective.
Caleb Bonham, pretty big dude. Just saying.
Yeah, but Jim scared me with the minor league notes and his defensive issues at Birmingham, though, James. So I'm a bit
short. Talking about future first baseman.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think you'd be pretty nifty there.
Interesting. All right. I didn't think about that.
It's not a shortstop. First baseman is within his reach.
Okay. All right. So, all right.
Jacob Gonzalez walked so he could run. And at plus run times based on how he looked at the futures game.
All right.
Thick McRun fast.
Just saying. They're alternatives. Okay. You have a million infielders. Shortstop's going to be at first base.
You can build the entire infield out of shortstops in the near future for the White Sox. But I understand
you'll be telling your kids, like, Do you believe Bonnemer was a shortstop when he was coming up through the minors? Our 40 home run first baseman, really? Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw it.
Yeah, Jim Thome, I think, was drafted as a shortstop too back in the day. So was Ryan Braun for the Brewers. Maybe one of the worst shortstops I've ever seen. But I still think that this is a worthwhile pursuit for the White Sox. Now, Jim, the question that, we have more questions as well from our Sox Machine subscribers. Grinnell Steve, as always, thank you, Steve. Who would you prioritize in approaching for extensions for the White Sox? And I think this is a good question, Jim, coming from Steve. But the other side of the coin for me that I've been thinking about since that segment with WGN, could there be a fear, I guess, from Jerry Reinsdorf's point of view, maybe the White Sox front office, to not repeat the same mistakes as the previous front office regime, who signed all that core of players to contract extensions and then ended up not counting against the books because they didn't stay with the team?
One of the reasons why I've been, even before this recent turnaround where the White Sox are tied for first place, one of the reasons why I was optimistic about Chris Getz, or at least his approach, was that he didn't really consider extensions uh, a huge priority. Part of it is because the White Sox didn't have players worth extending to a meaningful degree, but also we saw just the way the previous front office almost became complacent with the idea of, like, once they extended Tim Anderson, Yohan Moncada, Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert. We saw this happen with Kenny Williams talking about the Manny Machado, coming in second for his services and saying, well, if we sign Machado, then that Corey likes so much might not be around, almost speaking about it in extortive terms. And it made me think like, oh, they think like they've done the work, or they've painted themselves into a corner mentally in terms of, we locked in our guys. This is going to be the core for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And this has to work. And, once the pieces started falling by the wayside, nobody had trade value. There was really no way for them to pivot out of it. So I think that's one area where, we've seen Getz be a lot more transactional when it comes to trying to figure out, who might fit, going through a ton of options, using, dozens and dozens of players each year. As he goes into this, building a team that is contending, we'll see if he slows that down. But the fact that he hasn't really made a huge priority or talked up the idea of having to extend guys, I think is ultimately healthy. And I think when it comes to Murakami and, the kind of extension where you're talking about signing a guy past 30, signing a guy with warts, I think that will be more of a Justin Ishbia thing. It takes like an Illich type approach. Like, I'm thinking like when they signed Prince Fielder after Victor Martinez went down, and it was really like an over solution to a problem. They did not need to sign Prince Fielder to fill in for like a late Victor Martinez injury, but they signed him for like a huge deal. And there was a question of like, well, what do you do when he gets older? And, Dave Dombrowski doesn't care. Mike Illich didn't care. And they were able to pivot out of it with the, Ian Kinsler trade. And I think it takes a certain amount of like, oh, we'll let that problem fall to tomorrow guy, or 2030 guy. And we saw that with Rick Hahn, especially, in Kenny Williams to a lesser degree, because Hahn did more of the talking, just talking about like how they couldn't afford to hamstring themselves like 6 years down the road. Like, why are you planning for 6 years down the road when you shouldn't be able to count on having a job for that long, just being the nature of a GM? And so, like, when it comes to like signing that contract, that Jason Worth contract, that first $100 million plus deal, I think it's going to take an owner or a GM that certainly has the ability to either write another check or eat the cost, or have a GM who's so transactional will be like, I'll figure it out. I'll trade my way out of it, or at least I'll try to trade my way into something that looks different, and maybe the alchemy is different, and ultimately it's more productive than what we had. But there was just a certain amount of, once all those extensions were locked into place, the White Sox just stopped fighting, or they stopped like, we saw like their constant addition of closers and relievers. Just, they thought they had the lineup and they just kept adding on the margins rather than transforming the lineup. And so when you don't have extensions and you have no cost controlled, but you also have no years accounted for, still a lot of things you can do.
And I bring this up because Chase Burns, the Cincinnati Reds, just signed a contract extension. We have seen so many contract extensions, especially for younger players around Major League Baseball. We haven't seen it yet from the White Sox. We'll see. I think for me, it's a no-brainer. White Sox, I'm okay if they want to sign Murakami to a Kyle Schwarber type extension. If their sales team cannot find partners in Japan to pay for that contract with new sponsorship deals and new television deals to broadcast White Sox games in Japan so they could see Murakami in action, they need a new sales team. I'll just put it like that. Like how much money the Dodgers have made off Shohei Ohtani. I'm not saying Murakami's going to bring in Ohtani money, but he should be able to bring enough to help pay for a new contract. Everybody else for the White Sox, though, it is an interesting conversation. Let us know in the comment section, either on the podcast.
This is what I'm
page.
worried about with if we don't sign Murakami, salespeople are getting fired over this man's contract rate, giving the baseball ops to Willies.
Anyways, let us know in the comments section on soxmachine.com or on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/soxmachine. Before we wrap up, the Chicago White Sox are back in action this weekend as they head north of the border to visit Toronto and face the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are currently in last place right now in the American League East because of the Boston Red Sox winning 9 straight games. The Blue Jays are 6 games below 500 starting the post-All-Star break of the schedule as they are 45-51. They lost their last 2 games and they've been kind of sputtering their last 10. They are 5-5, and at home this year, kind of a surprise, they are 24-25 this year in Toronto. And then your pitching probables for this series on Friday, it'll be righty Spencer Miles for the Blue Jays, and Anthony Kay will be the first to take the ball for the Chicago White Sox. And then on Saturday, you have old nemesis Shane Bieber against Davis Martin, which Martin wanted lots of rest, and we'll see how he fares after an extended break. And then on Sunday, the White Sox will not have to face Dylan Cease this weekend, but they do have to go up against Trey Yasevich. And for the White Sox, let's see if he continue his heater. Sean Burke will take the ball for the White Sox on Sunday. And there's been a lot of conversations. I've been on many podcasts. James was asked about this question as well. What do the White Sox have to do to improve as far as their road record? And they start on a road trip, 3 games in Toronto. We'll be recapping that series Sunday night before the White Sox head down to Arlington, Texas to face the Texas Rangers. James and Jim, I'll start with you, James. What do you think will be the biggest factor for the White Sox in this series against the Blue Jays if seeking another road series win?
I mean, hard to say, but Tristan Peters getting superpowers from crossing the Canadian border would certainly be helpful. Spencer Miles is not fully stretched out. Shane Bieber's been kind of iffy since coming off the IL. Like Trey Savage's last start was awful. Like the way this team was like kind of separated itself or had these blowout wins is when they just kind of like jump on these vulnerable starters, especially like they clearly, because we see the downside of it so often, like believe in blitzing guys in the zone are early and not really letting people get settled. So if these guys are off or they have some sort of like either tell or certain thing that they're trying to eliminate based on the way they've struggled the last couple of starts, they've kind of shown the ability to break games open against when they find starters vulnerable. Certainly been plenty of games where they have to wait to get to the bullpen, and it looks like, man, what's wrong with these guys until the 6th or 7th inning. But I could go on like Anthony Kay pitching well, or Davis Martin needs to look like rejuvenated after the break, or Sean Burke continuing what he's been doing. But as far as like the biggest thing, like here's where this could come into turn into like a convincing series win. It's just looking like, hey, all these Blue Jays starters are like kind of iffy, at least just looking at them. You don't know what anybody fixed or figured out over the break, but
Sure.
At least going into it's like no one. I don't see anyone who's like, oh man, he's going to eat their lunch from the Toronto probables.
No, I like that, James, because it goes a long way if the White Sox offense could put up at least 5 runs or have those outbursts where they're scoring 6 or 7 runs like we saw in their series split against the Cleveland Guardians a couple of weeks ago. Jim, how about you? What do you think is going to be the biggest X factor for the White Sox in this series against Toronto?
I just heard Toronto probables, and I thought that'd be a good name for a team. like the Nashville Probables. You might see something. No, yeah, you're looking at 3 right-handed starters, and we've seen the White Sox have to endure a lot of lefties thrown at them, and we'll see what happens at the deadline, or we'll see what happens when everybody's back fully operational and knocking off the rust. But right now, like with 3 righties lined up and with their plan A lineup finally in place, like Murakami back at the same time that Kyle Teal is back, at the same time that Braden Montgomery is up, and then you have Colson Montgomery, who is fully rested, somebody who seemed like he could use a little bit of time off his feet. Here's hoping he comes back refreshed. But you're seeing like the White Sox plan A lineup, or like best case scenario lineup when we thought about what this team might look like in July, facing 3 starters who are all right-handed and all either like, Spencer Miles has pitched well, but he's not quite up to 5 innings to start yet. And then, Bieber's coming off the injured list, and Savage was good until that last start. Like the last start was awful, but the few starts before then were okay or to good. We'll see what form he looks like. But yeah, this is their time for their plan A frontline lineup to show up.
Yeah, I think also for me, the biggest X factor outside of the White Sox offense on the starting front, let's see on how Anthony K, Davis Martin at least start this series. Anthony K's been throwing the ball pretty well as of late. Davis Martin admitted he needed that break. Sean Burke didn't want the break. And I think that's been a big factor for the White Sox on the road is how they have pitched away from right field. If all 3 of these guys can deliver quality starts for the White Sox, knowing of what is coming in Texas, the fact that Eric Fetty and Noah Schultz are lined up for the first 2 games in that series, if the White Sox can save the bullpen and make sure they are rested, because I think they're going to need them for the first 2 games against the Rangers early next week, I think that would be a big win for the White Sox. So lots of runs help. I'm with you guys as well. Let's see how the White Sox offense fares against these 3 Blue Jays righties. And like I said, we'll be recapping this series on Sunday night in the next episode of the Sox Machine podcast. But thank you guys so much for listening and watching our first show on the Foul Territory Network. Again, we're very excited. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the social media platforms at Sox Machine. Follow James Fegan at JR Fegan. You can follow me at Sox Machine_Josh. And if you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, Major League Baseball, you can sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at soxmachine.com/products. Monthly plans start at $5, but we have a sale first month right now. I think is what, 54 cents, Jim?
Yeah, 53 cents. And let's get James those frosted tips.
Yes, sir. Yes, let's get James those frosted tips. So again, go to soxmachine.com/products and subscribe to Sox Machine today. Get the ad-free version of both the podcast and the website as well. So definitely sign up. Take advantage of that sale. The Sox
Dylan
Machine
doesn't have that power over me anymore. It's
Sure.
2022 where he was the only good story and I had to write about him once per week. But this team has too many good players. No individual White Sox has the power.
But you do, subscribers. You do. So again, sign up at soxmachine.com/products. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of soxmachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Foul Territory Network. Alongside James Fegan and Jim Margalus, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.